Good morning. Today I am going to show you my gigantic basket of quilting work in progress. Like literally, this basket is huge, and it's overflowing. And I feel like I'm gonna need to finish some of these projects in the next year so that I can justify starting more projects. So the first one is literally, I don't know, it's gonna take me like an hour to get organized and figure out what I already cut. But I started working on the Happy Go Lucky quilt um, by Sherry McConnell of A Quilting Life. And this came out a couple years ago. And I started cutting out and literally have a huge pile of fabric. And it's really pretty, but I have no idea where I left off. As you can see, I've got lots of the fat quarters. I believe I bought the kit. So I have all kinds of really pretty fabrics cut on this. And it's on the top of the basket, so I'm doing it first. And it is a gigantic mess. So note to self, like next time you want to start a project, um, like try to get through the cutting before you. Honestly, I think what happened was I had started it a couple days before school started, and once the school year starts, like there was no way I would get too much of anything here. Show you the fabrics. They're gorgeous. They're bright and happy. Like this would be a great project to work on in the middle of winter. But that is my first project. And oh, maybe I bought the fat quarter bundle. I don't know. But anyway, like there's so much fabric here from that quilt. So, and I mean, the colors are just bright and gorgeous, very classic for Sherry and Chelsea fabric. So that is my first project of very many. And that gets that out of the way. I literally have like random scraps of fabric in my basket. My basket's a disaster. Okay, so my next one was a Scrappy project, Halloween themed. I think most of this fabric was either from Joann's or from Craftsy. I used to buy a lot of fabrics from them back in the day, and I just did a bunch of 9-patch blocks. And I don't even think I put batting in this. I think I just literally quilted it to some flannel. It'd be a perfect like throw blanket for the floor when we're sitting and playing and hanging out. So just a massive Halloween themed quilt, which literally only needs binding. My next one I started was a Corey Yoder scrappy Irish chain along a couple years ago, and I started it. They all need to be ironed apparently as well. So this is one of my scrappy blocks. Just lots of beautiful fabrics. This one's all wrinkled. I'll have more to show in a minute. I think they're underneath some of the other ones. I don't. Not very professional. Should have ironed these, but I made all of the blocks for it, and then I think I was trying to size it up to like a king size quilt because I used to have a king size bed, and then I cut a million little squares and was going to do an extra border around, and then stalled on the project. So here, let me move this one out of the way. I can show you more of the blocks. Like literally, I have this huge pile of blocks that goes with this project. But anyway, so now that I don't have a king size bed anymore, there's absolutely no excuse not to finish this. And I just went with lots of just bright, happy colors. There's just so many of them. I think I tried to be a little choosier with the fabrics that I used for some of the solid scrappy blocks. And yeah, so just tons and tons of these. So no excuse. I need to finish that one. Let me move that one out of the way. The next one is, let's see, I have some notes from, if I knew the pattern, I put it down. Let's see. This is Bumper Crop by It's So Emma, and I used the called for the most part, Joe Morton fabrics. It's literally one of my favorite fabric collections. Went on Etsy a year or two after I made this and just bought more of the plaid. I really liked it. If she ever has these kind of plaids again, at some point I'll need to take proper pictures. I'm trying to figure this out as I'm doing it. But just a beautiful quilt, and it's giant. And I striped the on the diagonal the light and the dark background. So anyway, there is that quilt. But just lots of beautiful blocks. I was in the Fat Quarter Shop reproduction fabric club for a long time, so I was using some of those fabrics. This one is another example of a project I got started with and then stopped. Literally, I have tons of these. This was a Lori Holt quilt along, and these were the background blocks, and so it was just all scrappy squares. And here, I've got the pattern box here, the Prairie Meadow, and I bought the kit for this from Fat Quarter Shop. And so I have the box, and I have all of the templates, and I think I also got a little intimidated because it is applique, and I'd never really done applique on this level, and I'm also not sure if I want to do a quilt, like a bed quilt with the applique blocks, just because I've got big dogs and my quilts have to get washed all the time, and I'm worried that I'll put all the work into something like this and it won't last. So I might turn them into project bags instead. I haven't decided, but got this whole box just full of gorgeous Lori Holt fabrics, like a scrap from somebody else, but just tons of just beautiful fabrics that go with this quilt. So that will be a lot of fun to kind of settle in and learn how to do at some point. Let's see, the next one's another Scrappy Patriotic quilt. I was in the holidays club for a long time, so I have a lot of just the patriotic holiday type. Trying to get better at showing these as I go. Just a whole bunch of 5-inch squares, and it's just a lot of fun. Good way to just quickly quilt, especially because if I'm doing a larger project, a lot of times I will, when I'm chain piecing, I'll just chain piece little blocks together, and then eventually you end up with enough for a giant quilt. Got a lot of random fabrics for bindings that keep falling out of my basket here, so I guess as I get to those projects. This one was, I believe, Fig Tree. Looking at my notes here, see if I can find it here. I'll show it while I look at my notes. And this was, I want to say, the Fat Quarter Shop's 2020 charity quilt. So it's probably still free on their blog. And I used Fig Tree, I think it was like their strawberry line, and all these just beautiful blocks. I need to finish this one. Like literally, it just needs to be quilted and put the binding on. One of my favorite ones I've ever made. I love the color palette. It's very spring. I really enjoyed making this one. So that one needs to be finished. So many of these, I feel like I just get to the point where I need to quilt the quilt, and then I don't. The next one is in various stages of assembly here. So I was making an Easter quilt, and I have some I can show in a minute, but I was using the Fat Quarter Shop triangle paper. I'm trying not to poke myself with any pins here. And again, I think I was going for like a king size quilt. So I have a million of these all pinned and ready to sew. And let me see if I can get to some of the blocks here. You can see there's like a million of them. Again, these would be cute project bags. So here's some of the blocks that I sewed. Just a 9-patch. I saw something online that used this Easter fabric base, and then I combined it with some Sherry and Chelsea fabric, and just had a lot of fun just kind of making my own pattern based on the picture I saw. Lots of pretty fabrics. I think this was another one of the holiday Fat Quarter Shop fabrics, and then I ended up going on and picking up some more so I'd have enough to do with this ginormous quilt. Probably have enough to make a quilt and project bags if I don't make a king size quilt, but just tons of blocks. I don't want to keep showing the same ones over and over again, but just really pretty. Let's see. So many. I mean, I literally just tons of them. So let me move these out of the way. I'm gonna have fun putting all of these back in the basket when I'm done. I also have a bunch of 2.5 strips for this particular project, pre-cut for a scrappy binding. Just took the leftovers and just cut them into strips. So I will have scrappy binding for that quilt. I'm going to put them with that quilt so that they're not just floating around my basket. So Just lots of really pretty fabrics for those. Sorry, this next one's kind of wrinkled too. For some reason, I decided to make 2 of those Fat Quarter Shop 2020 charity quilts. So this one was with another fabric. I think Stacy Itsu, might be saying her name wrong. But I used some of her fabric. This one has definitely like child vibes, very bright and happy. If I ever have a little girl, this will be perfect for her bed. But it's massive. It's the top is done. I'm trying to, and it just needs to be quilted with the binding put on. The next one is actually quilted and needs binding. I have got the binding cut and everything. So literally it's one afternoon away from being done. And this is the Sew in Love by Aditya Sitar. Let me see. And this one was a labor of love. This was literally the last time. This is actually Aditya Sitar's fabric, but this was the last block I ever used Joann's fabric for quilting. I used one of their red fabrics for the little pieces. I remember I was like steaming the blocks and ironing the blocks, and it bled everywhere, and I had to remake all of them. So sad. But anyway, that was the last time I used that fabric for quilting on something like this, but so fun. I even bought the little applique pre-cuts and sewed those on. But this was a lot of fun to make. I have another one of her projects in my basket coming up. But anyway, this is just a beautiful quilt. And now that I don't have a king size bed, it'll probably work. So anyway, I enjoyed that one a lot. I did a scrappy backing, so just some fabric from Stash. And there's some other like pretty pinks and stuff on the back. It was in my scrappy background phase. Oh, here's some of the pretty blocks. Anyway, that one was a lot of fun to make. This next one's kind of crinkled too. A lot of these projects moved with me from Idaho as well, so they've been just kind of sitting languishing for many years at this point, and so they need some love. So this one is some Sweetwater. I want to say I did a another one of the Fat Quarter Shop quilt-alongs using the blocks. I can't remember which year. I think I started making some of the blocks that went with one of the quilt-alongs, and then I had a Sherry and Chelsea book, and they had blocks like this where you basically cut a square and you put border around it, and it makes it the same size as a 12-inch block. And so I made a bunch of those. This is another one I'd like to finish. I just kind of made my own version of a scrappy block. This is my favorite kind of quilt. Just beautiful fabric. I love Sweetwater fabric. I love the color palette, and God, I was in their label club for a while and enjoyed making those. All right, next one is a Aditya Sitar. She did during the pandemic. She did a free mystery block pattern, and I have these in 4 pieces. I think I was planning on doing quilt as you go. All 4 are about the same, and I used a bunch of just pretty blues and creams from my stash. I want to say it's the Alaska pattern. When she published it, I don't think it's a free stitch along anymore, but so I have 4 of these. These were a lot of fun to stitch too. I remember enjoying getting those blocks. I think they're all the same, and it'll make a pattern when they're all sewn together. There'll be a secondary pattern that appears, but I have 4 of these, and so it'll be a nice size quilt when it's done too. I know next year if I make one of these videos, I'll have to be professional and like iron everything. The next one was my version of she did a Learn to Quilt, a Fat Quarter Shop. Let's see if I can find the name of it. I put notes here. It's their, I don't have the name of it right handy, but they have a beginner quilt pattern series that they did, and she had a bunch of amazing videos. And I made 4 of them to make a much larger quilt. So I took all of my reproduction fabrics that I had been receiving in the different clubs. And I just made 4 of every block. I really like this one too. The patterns and the fabrics on this. Oh, I like this flying goose block. I want to make a whole quilt with flying goose blocks one of these days. Anyway, so that is the first one. And they're all slightly different just because it's the scrappy nature. Some of them I had enough to do 4 blocks with the same prints, and some of the other ones I had to supplement, but they all have the same 9 patch. It's just a combination of a bunch of different fabric designers. But this one was a lot of fun. I think this is another one I had planned on doing, a quilt as you go, where I would just quilt each of these sections and then sew it all together, put the backing on. So anyway, another one that is so close to being finished, like one good week or weekend's worth of work, and I'll have a finished quilt. There's the last one. So I have 4 of these. So that's another good way. Sometimes if you have a cute stitch along and you want to be able to make it a bigger quilt, just make more of them. So let's see. I've got all of my bindings for, this is going to be for the Sew in Love. And then I think I pulled these for the quilt I just showed, just a red. I don't know if I'll actually do those or not. This next one is just a scrappy quilt. I had bought a bunch of fabric from Craftsy. I don't know if they still sell fabric or not, but I was a big fan of just going on there and buying. My next quilt is a scrappy 9-patch quilt that I sewed using different fabrics that I had purchased on Craftsy when I first got back into quilting 5 or 6 years ago, maybe more. And they had all kinds of pretty prints and just like really soft romantic colors. And I think some of these are like Lori Holt fabrics. Some of the other prints I think are Robert Kaufman. I think they still print those. I saw something similar on Fat Quarter Shop recently. Love fabrics with maps. Anyway, so I have a whole ginormous quilt. That one honestly could be a backing to a quilt too. I'm not opposed to backing a quilt with something like this. My next project was a fun quilt along. It was the Fig Tree Witch's Night Out quilt, and uses Fig Tree fabrics, which I love their Halloween line. This was a lot of fun to stitch too. And this one just needs to be quilted. And then it's done. Let me readjust it a little bit. There we go. So I'll have to try to get this done by next October so that I can enjoy it. It's literally just been sitting in my basket for a couple years waiting for me to finish it. So I have 2 more works in progress to show. So this next one, I actually had to spend some time digging around the internet to find it because I left myself a sticky note, but I didn't write down the name of it. So this is the Jessica Dayton Little Village pattern, and she had I don't think it's free anymore, but she had a free stitch along several years ago, and she had these adorable little blocks. And I think it's Scandi fabric. They probably reprint versions of this every year. And it was like these cute little house blocks. And then they had different little blocks to go in the houses. I think some of them I just used different 6-inch blocks rather than using the blocks that came with the pattern. I wanted to do something fast and easy. Just pulled out one of my Lori Holt books and just pulled out different 6-inch blocks that I like, because some of them were really tricky. Like that was a really tricky one to sew. And I was planning on making this a ginormous quilt. Again, not following the directions on how big a quilt should be. So got a lot of these blocks. Some of them are kind of similar. Let's see. And so a few more of those. And then I was actually planning on working on this December, and I don't know that I have time. But I figured out what I did is I had sewed all of the house pieces. So I've got the roofs, and then the door units, and then I didn't cut out for the other 6-inch blocks. So I have all of these blocks that need a little 6-inch patchwork block. So I just have this whole box of fabric. And think according to my official diagram, I had planned on doing some 9-patch blocks. So I cut a bunch of the fabric just into different squares. These look like they're maybe 4-inch, 5-inch. I probably did the math to make sure they would work. And my plan was to make a bunch of 9-patch blocks with those to go with this quilt. So who knows what that will end up looking like or how long that will take for me to finish. But that was a stitch along from a couple years ago. Had to do some digging to find that one. The last one I have was the designer mystery from Fat Quarter Shop, the 2023 mystery block. And I think I sewed a grand total of 1 or 2 of these blocks. Let me see. I might have just sewed one. I have one block. I think my plan was I was going to leave all of the green out of these and just make it more of like a patriotic color. So I have a whole box of these really pretty patterns. One I apparently haven't even opened. So like on this one where it has the green, I'll change that out for a red. Same thing with that one. And then the finishing kit. It's a cute box too. Like I would reuse this box for something else. It's a nice box. And then a couple more of these. Oh, I think these were my leftovers from my first. So they're very generous on their kits. I think this was my first time doing a block of the month with them. And so here's some more of the blocks. I think they still sell their patterns online. So anyway, that is my very extensive quilt show and tell. I need to spend some time finishing my quilts. I think part of it is that sometimes it just takes so much time to do the quilting. I don't know if I need to figure out a better setup to actually long arm my own quilts. I don't know. I don't necessarily want to send them out to do it. Maybe I need to buy something to use with my brother's sewing machine. And that way I can kind of long arm them myself. But anyway, that is my show and tell for today of my all of my quilts. Anyway, thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you next time.